Welcome aboard, everybody. It is Sunday night, and as you can see, I am crammed up in a small room with two great guys, Roy Hunter and Bruce Eimer. And every Sunday night, Scott Sandlin and I get together to share with you some ideas in hypnosis, to talk to some of the experts from around the world, and to share with you some ideas. And Scott may or may not be, or may not join us. He actually is flying back because this is the official sort of IMDHA convention edition of the Sunday Night Live show. Dr. Eimer and I, Roy, and Bob Otto and others are here in Florida for the annual IMDHA convention. Scott was here all day. He's on a plane heading back home, but he may or may not get here on time. But I'm really glad that you're here, and I'm really glad that I have some awesome guests tonight. Now, normally Scott would talk. Well, I type something in the chat box, and usually I have dual monitors. So tonight I'm a little technically challenged, but if you're not seeing us, refresh the page. And so that's what I'm typing here. If you are not seeing us, or click start the video. Normally Scott's talking when I'm typing that stuff in there, but we are officially live. Now, the reason I asked Bruce Eimer and Roy Hunter to is really sort of two or threefold. Bruce Eimer years ago wrote one of my favorite books in hypnosis. I've been recommending it probably for at least 10 years to people. It's a book called Brief Cognitive Hypnotherapy. And Bruce is a licensed psychologist, an expert in cognitive behavioral therapy, which is considered an evidence-based approach. And for those who are familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy, was a creator of one of the creators of cognitive behavioral therapy, and believed that it was best done in trance states and utilized hypnosis. That's often something that's not known. And so, Bruce, you wrote, like I said, one of my favorite books, and Brief Cognitive Hypnotherapy. And if you wouldn't mind, just sort of share with those who are here tonight a little bit about, you know, why that's important for hypnotists at all levels, and really coming from all walks of life to learn about. Tell us a little bit about, you know, brief cognitive hypnosis.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me to join you on this program. Basically, brief cognitive hypnosis, which I have to give credit to my senior author, whose name is Jordan Zarin. He's a licensed clinical social worker who's now retired, who's now in West Palm Beach. And also, he's a past president of the American Society of Clinical Hypnosis. He and I have been friends for going on 20 years now. And the model of brief cognitive actually was developed by Jordan. What really fascinated me when Jordan and I met back in 1997 in Fort Worth at the annual meeting of the ASCH was he was teaching a workshop on the one visit stop smoking approach to help people stop smoking. Basically, he was helping people stop smoking in 45 minutes, and he had about a 70% success rate. He tracked his results. It fascinated me. So naturally, I wanted to learn about it, and I took his workshop and began using his protocol, and within a short time found that my results were equal to his. Now, he and I became friends, partly also due to the fact that he lives near where my mom lives in South Florida. So it was convenient for me to go down and spend time with him. We spent time together and actually wrote that book. Now, what interested me about his approach was that it is called, and I used the term, and he used the term, he coined the term, brief cognitive hypnosis. It's not like the manualized cookbook approaches to cognitive behavior therapy that employ hypnosis as an additional modality, like Howard Ellis does, or some of the other cognitive therapists like Karen Beck and his daughter Judith Beck, who use imagery and relaxation and so forth. Now, Howard Ellis is kind of unique in that he kind of grew up on hypnosis, although he really never became what you would consider to be a hypnotherapist. He used hypnosis more as a form of relaxation and limited his work to direct suggestion, which really turned into exhortation for people to buy into his philosophy of anti-absolutism and anti-shouldism, or
my favorite phrase of Ellis's was "Don't should on yourself."
Right, don't should on yourself and stop masturbation.
Stop masturbation.
Right. He calls, like your muffs and your shoulds, basically turn you into compulsive listener. And his work is really creative and it's really good, but it does have some limitations. And the limitations of his work and a lot of the stuff that came from that, some of the parallel courses in the cognitive behavioral camp that Aaron Beck with cognitive therapy and Mike and Baum, who developed cognitive behavioral therapy. I forget what his
BST, right?
Yeah. The point is that all of those approaches neglect the unconscious mind. They neglect the fact that most of what people do is due to automated behavior patterns and automated thought patterns, which essentially are habits, thought habits, behavioral habits, and emotional habits or emotional conditioning. They really took the emotion or the affect or the mood stuff out of their approach, and especially in the cognitive therapy work, which is very popular today, was adopted by managed care because it's brief and it's empirically based and so forth. It is very, very serious, very, very logical, and it doesn't address the feeling aspect. So what you end up having is half therapy. Therapy, because I think that most people that are seasoned therapists know that if you take the affect or the mood component out of therapy, you really don't have therapy. What you have is education. You have, a class or a tutorial. And the problem also comes into play whereby the people trained under these people, these godfathers of cognitive therapy, how to learn how to do it from a cookbook, from manuals. And that's how they got their studies, from manuals. And so you have people that are learned in this form of therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, cognitive therapy, rational emotive therapy, which later returned rational emotive behavior therapy. Guess what? It's following scripts, but it's not hypnosis, okay? And what Jordan did, which was really fascinating to me, pointed that out. And he had been involved in hypnosis for longer than I was alive.
You're at Florida State.
He was very involved in hypnosis in Florida and very involved in getting master's level folks to become accepted as members by the American Society for Hypnosis. He actually started out his practice in Boston, Massachusetts, where he was raised. And back in the old days, I guess, the 30s, actually, before America got involved in World War II, he was actually a shell for a stage hypnotist. He was also a magician. He got very interested in hypnosis from that point on, in addition to the fact that he had a grandfather that was a hypnotist, so he had some legacy there.
So let me ask you, or not really ask you a question here. You and I share a background in being educated in cognitive behavioral therapy, using these techniques, traditional counseling in addition to hypnotherapy. You and I have both been fascinated by the ability to use hypnosis as an emotional tool. Cognitive behavioral therapy, though, is far different. It's almost like the current era of mindfulness or contextual psychology, and it really focuses on the present. Although the ABC of REBT, all these acronyms, sort of look at what the antecedent behavior focused in the now, which is contrasted to Roy and the work of regression. And I think a lot of people are probably surprised to find me sitting next to my buddy Roy. We've been friends here for years, because people sort of see these approaches as not necessarily being complementary. But you co-wrote a book with Roy, and Roy, how do you use these therapeutic approaches that Bruce and I are very familiar with, and integrate it with regression work? You said something really interesting to me today, that although you're an expert in parts therapy and an expert in regression, you actually don't use those with all of your clients all of the time, which I think surprises people. And you're pretty eclectic in your approach, really basing it on what's most important to the client. So how does it kind of fit into the regression and the parts work with what sometimes people see as a conflict, which you and I really see as different approaches to helping people in the way that's meaningful to them?
Let me start out by using a metaphor. There's more than one way to get from Los Angeles to New York, and the destination is more important than the journey. I take a different journey than many people in the hypnotherapy profession, but the late Charles Tebbets, who was my mentor in 1983, was a pioneer of client-centered hypnosis, in that he taught us to fit the technique to the client and not vice versa.
Now, by the way, before we go any further, because you mentioned metaphor, you have to tell everybody your metaphor joke. Ladies and gentlemen, I hate to interrupt Roy when he's telling us really important stuff, but he told me the best joke I have ever heard in my entire life at dinner tonight. So before we go any further, Roy, you got to tell everybody the joke.
Well, the joke didn't come from me. I heard it from somebody who stopped by my table today when I autographed a book. He said, do you know why it's risky to tell a metaphor to a kleptomaniac?
Why is it risky to tell a metaphor to a kleptomaniac, Roy?
Because he might take it literally.
That's a very, very good. I like that a lot.
So every Sunday night we get together to talk about hypnosis and sometimes to have a good time and hear an awesome joke from Roy Hunter or to learn from writers like Bruce Heimer, etc. But now I didn't want to forget that joke. So I'm sorry to cut you off. If you'll continue and tell us a little bit
Roy,
more.
can I have your permission to use that?
Yes, certainly.
I think everybody in the room is about to tell them. By the way, if you have a question for Roy, usually I have dual monitors. Today I don't. But if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box there. So Roy, go ahead and I'm going to move this around a little bit.
Okay.
People said they had microphone difficulties, so I'll use the high-tech ability to turn this, trying to get the microphone head on to whoever speaks.
Okay, that's fine. Charlie taught that if I'm motivated to change a habit or achieve a goal, that suggestion, image, and imagery will help some of the people some of the time. And I would say that over half of the clients I've seen throughout the years have made great progress because of the combination of their desire to change, combined with a level of hypnosis that helps them really increase the ability to imagine things. Imagination is a language of the subconscious, and Charlie taught us that emotion is the motivating power or energy of the subconscious. So by combining imagination and the emotional satisfaction of achieving a goal, or if you please, imagining the attitude of gratitude, I've helped many people achieve successes without ever having to use parts or regression.
Sure.
But Charlie taught that when suggestion and imagery are not sufficient, you have to discover. Notice I didn't say diagnose because I'm not qualified or licensed to diagnose like you are. So the subconscious can disclose the real or perceived cause of the problem or the cause of the resistance to positive suggestion if you use the right tools. So I will use either parts therapy or regression. Sometimes it's not obvious which one to use, so I'll use idiomotor response questioning. And I know you co-authored a book with Dr. Dabney Ewan on that, and I have guidelines for idiomotor response questions, which is based on the 7-key system established decades ago by Cheek and Lacrone.
Right.
And it's an awesome way of finding out from the subconscious the categories
By the way,
of the causes.
talking about the depth scale of Lacrone that was adopted as really a measurement tool on people.
No, this
No,
is
I'm
different.
telling you about the questioning people in hypnosis to find out the source of their resistance. He's talking about, I don't want to speak for you, but you know, since we kind of got together on doing this, and I've been doing hypnosis for about 20 years, you're talking about the structure of questioning to elicit the causes for the resistance or the perceived emotional causes for the problem.
It's evolved in various forms over the years. For example, one cause or category of resistance is a suggestion or imprint from an authority figure, present or past, a current unresolved issue, which Charlie called body language, and I believe Cheek and Lacrone called that body language.
Organ language.
Organ language, okay. Secondary gain, identifying with a mentor, past experience that was painful, inner conflict, and
Now,
self-punishment.
I don't mind being shot out of the water, so I'm going to ask a question here. I'm going to let you guys answer without even interjecting my opinion. This is a question that I think a lot of people have, though, particularly those who are trained in Ericksonian hypnosis. Stan's idea, or one of his ideas, was that really there is no such thing as resistance. It's us who creates the resistance. It's us who needs to go with the client. The client comes to us not the way they could be, should be, or ought to be, but the way they are. So if there's resistance, it's actually our problem, not the client's. And then there's the other school of thought, the third wave behavioralism, acceptance and commitment therapies, Marshall Linehan and dialectical behavioral therapy, that says cause doesn't really make a bit of difference. What's important is change. And if we look at cause at all, it's so that we can go back to that prevention tool. So those might be two of the criticisms of an approach that really does look at cause or does look in the past. How do you sort of answer that criticism from some branches or some perspectives in psychotherapy, which really is a phenomenal approach that I often teach?
Allow me to answer that the way I would answer a client who comes to me to quit smoking and then comes back a week or two later. I'm still smoking. It's like a part of me wants to quit, but I keep backsliding and lighting up. Or the person seeing me for weight loss who still keeps indulging in junk food. I'll say to a client, we wear different hats. You're seeing my hypnotherapist hat. After a long day, I have an inner child that wants to relax, so then my inner child cap comes on. When my wife and I want to do something as a couple, romantic or husband hat comes on. There's a part of you that wants to quit smoking and has motivated you to invest your time and money for these sessions. But there's another part of you that wants to keep on smoking, otherwise you wouldn't need my services in the first place. So I'm going to use a technique which my late mentor called parts therapy, where I mediate between the part of you that wants to quit and that part of you that keeps causing you to backslide. And by facilitating an inner dialogue, I will ask the right questions to help you find your ideal resolution. And it's proven to be a very effective technique. Any questions? And if the client is still uncomfortable with it, I'll make reference to Gordon Emerson, who's a protege of John and Helen Watkins. I'll tell the client that a world authority on a similar technique has discovered through research that all of us have anywhere from 5 to 15 active parts that influence our conscious behavior in any given calendar week.
And that similar therapy is sometimes people say, well, I don't see anything about parts therapy. I'm saying Thomas gave it that you use. Some people know this as ego strengthening therapy and ego therapy.
There are a number of variations. Ego state therapy, parts therapy. There's another variation called voice dialogue. There's another variation that originated as Virginia Satir's parts party, which evolved into another NLP technique that today is the 6-step reframe, which is second generation from Virginia Satir's parts party. Then there's a professor from the psychiatry department in the University of San Diego, Dr. Edwin Yeager, who came up with his own variation 4 decades ago, which he calls subliminal therapy. And he calls out a wise, intelligent part called centrum, and he has centrum arbitrate with the various parts of his patient.
It sounds like in metaphysics, it might be related to what we might call the higher self, or even using a description of God,
Yes.
able to.
Well, Dr. Yeager told me personally that many of his patients believe that centrum is a higher self or a part accessing God.
Sure. Which we can get into all the related therapies here, which goes right into Carl Jung and the idea, mysticism and consciousness is making the things in therapy. So let me go over here to Bruce. You obviously have a background in all of these different approaches on your share of research and publication. You can go to scholarly journals and you can find many publications by Bruce Eimer. How do you answer that same question? I mean, how do you really see, regression and parts therapy and the work that you've done with Bruce sort of being reconciled with some of these competing ideas in therapy, which sometimes people really try to set up as a confrontation?
Sure. Well, there's always going to be a lot of different brands any type of product. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is that good therapy has certain things in common, whether it's cognitive therapy or good cognitive therapy or good hypnotherapy. You should ask me about brief cognitive hypnosis. I didn't get to really say that brief cognitive hypnosis, which my mentor Jordan Zarin has been practicing for over almost 50 years, was based on the idea that there is an unconscious, and that the unconscious mind is the place where the motivating factors for lots of behavior that people don't understand, resides, and where it comes from. So most people that go to a therapist don't understand why they're so caught up in the conflicts they're caught up in, and they can't help themselves. And so what hypnosis does is it makes therapy briefer and deeper. And the brief cognitive approach to therapy is cognitive only in the sense that what we do at the outset of therapy is we do the waking state reframing, which is basically helping the client or patient clarify the meanings with which he or she describes their problem, and help them to reframe the problem in terms that are amenable to modification or change. Then we use cognitive approaches only in the sense of gently challenging the person's belief system in the conversation, always maintaining rapport, so that by the time we actually are ready to do an induction, the person is already in trance. They're in a waking state of trance, and it doesn't even require, in many cases, any type of formal induction other than simply to say, especially if the patient came to me for hypnosis, well, you're already very relaxed and your eyes are closing, so you might as well just keep your eyes closed, take a deep breath, and relax even more, so that we can find some things that can help you fix into your mind a way of changing the behavior that you came here to change, namely smoking behavior, to change that to non-smoking behavior. So when you walk out of my office, you'll walk out as a non-smoker with no urge, no desire, no craving for cigarettes, and it won't bother you. There will be no withdrawal symptoms. You won't miss them. In fact, when you see other people smoking, oh yeah, you told me that your husband smokes, and you were concerned about the fact that you might slip back into becoming a smoker because he leaves his cigarettes around. Well, guess what? From now on, when you see him smoking a cigarette, when you smell the smoke from his cigarette, when you see him light up, in fact, it'll subconsciously, automatically reinforce your commitment to take care of your body and to refuse to smoke. So, the person is already in hypnosis. And then at that point, we can just proceed with suggestions, or, using fractionation, I might say, okay, let's do a formal induction so that you can go much deeper. I'm going to ask you to open your eyes, please, and they open their eyes. And, let's do a formal induction to help you go much deeper into hypnosis, so that the suggestions that you've asked me to give you, and I've already taken down on a notepad, the suggestions the person wants to get for me. We're talking smoking here, but people come to stop smoking and they're concerned about gaining weight from the give up cigarettes. So I've written the suggestions down, and they're ready and eager to get hypnotized, so that the suggestions will take inside their subconscious mind, and we'll do a formal induction. And there's so many different types of inductions. Obviously, I always recommend to people who are training in hypnotherapy that they use the induction that they feel most comfortable with, the induction that they like best. That's the induction with which they're going to gain the most rapport with the client, and the one they're going to do best with. So it might be the Dave-Ellman induction, or it might be a rapid eye roll, or it might be just a progressive muscle relaxation. But it's something that you don't have to read a script from, so you can pay attention.
You read the client.
You read the client,
Scriptotherapy,
exactly. Yeah, we don't advocate scriptotherapy. So that's where the difference is. Brief cognitive hypnosis is not just a combination or integration of manualized cookbooks, script-based cognitive therapy with some hypnotic relaxation, put somebody into a relaxed state so that their mind is hopefully clear enough to hear the suggestions. What it is, it's a whole approach to therapy that doesn't rely on cookbook manuals, and that essentially incorporates all of the principles of hypnosis, the laws of hypnosis, the laws of trance, as part of the methodology for achieving rapport with somebody, and then adds into that a very precise set of methods for helping somebody to clarify the meanings, which have been basically stopping them from changing.
Sure.
And that's resistance. Now, when Erickson, you earlier talked about, and it's true, people believe that, I'm not an expert on Ericksonian hypnosis, but then again, I don't think Milton Erickson was. He even coined the term Ericksonian hypnosis. Some of his proteges did. And you know something, Milton Erickson, to my knowledge, never specifically created a and called resistance, which he, talked about as being something, a word that should never be used. A lot of his proteges and disciples who came after he left this planet, really talked about how he did not believe in resistance. But of course he believed in resistance, or else he wouldn't have created all these types of ordeal therapies for people to go and climb mountains and cross deserts and do these weird things when they left his office as homework if he didn't believe in resistance.
Sure.
And, people also have to take into account the fact that Milton Erickson, who was a very, very bright man, who was light years ahead of his colleagues psychiatrists, and is one of the founders of ASCH, the American Society of Clinical Gnosis. He had his reputation was very, very wide and long. I mean, he had a long shadow. Who came very far away to see him they were already in hypnosis when before they even walked into his house. He saw patients in his house, and if you see somebody you've already talked to for, let's say, 15 minutes on the telephone, when they come to your office, if you're going to be successful with them, the first contact with the client or patient is on the telephone. So if you haven't formed rapport with them on the phone, then 50% likely that they don't show up at your office. Well, when they showed up at Milton Erickson's office, they already showed up in a receptive frame of mind, and all he had to do was close your eyes and do whatever he wanted to do. He had them in the palm of his hands, but they had resistance.
Which kind of goes to show that one of the most effective therapies is really, remember the old cigarettes product? It was sold at pharmacies, and it was a homeopathic thing. It basically had 1x of tobacco in it or whatever, and there's really zero science behind that, and yet it was the #1 product at Walgreens. And my theory was the reason why it worked is people made a decision to quit. They took and actually, even if it was scientifically an ineffective action, they committed to it by plunking down a $50 bill, and they followed the process. And it is often the ritual that's as important as the technique.
Absolutely.
All right, now before we go any further, every Sunday night we get together and have some great guests. Usually Scott Sandlin joins me today. He's on a plane, and I want to just take a minute to give a round of applause so you can take those backward threes in here, or frontward threes. I'll tell you to applaud on the end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Because the IMDHA has given Roy Hunter the Pen and Quill Award. So tell us a little bit about why you received the Pen and Quill Award and your most recent book.
Oh, well, thank you. Okay.
Most recent. I think this is an awesome award because as a writer, I always appreciate writers getting recognition. So congratulations.
Thank you.
We should have brought it with us. It's beautiful.
It's Through the Looking Glass, American Artists of Hypnosis, 1900 to 2012. And basically, it's a history of what Ash would consider the so-called lay hypnosis profession. Pioneers such as the legendary Dave Vellman. I do, of course, mention Milton Erickson. How can I write a book on the hypnosis history in this country without mentioning Milton Erickson? Harry Aarons is in there. Orman McGill, Charles Tebbets, who was my mentor. And the chapters are arranged by decade. Of course, the first half is covered very quickly because there wasn't nearly as much activity the first half of the 20th century as in the second half of the 20th century. And there are quite a few people who have contributed to the hypnotherapy profession in the 80s, 90s, and the first decade of the 21st century. And I was honored with the Pen and Quill Award for that. Actually, there's 6 years of research that went into that book. So it is the most difficult, challenging book I ever wrote. And I thought that...
You've read a lot of books.
Yes. And The recent one before that is The Art of Hypnotic Regression Therapy, which I co-authored with Dr. Eimer.
Sure.
And my motivation in writing that book is that there has been so much criticism over the years, not only against regression therapy, but against those of us who use regression therapy, that I felt that because the criticism had a lot of correct ammunition, that it needed to be addressed properly. For example, regression got a bad rap in the 80s, 90s,
Right,
and
when
90s
the
for,
abuses related to the whole SRA scare and that sort of stuff.
and the so-called memory reconstruction, and also people who did not know how to handle
That's one of the
reactions.
things I really appreciate about your teaching in regression is to inform the client of the potential for false memory.
I won't do a
And-
regression without that
Sure.
disclosure. And it's very short, to the point. I'll simply ask a question. If regression is called for, I'll say, have you heard anything about false memories or read any articles about it? And at least in my neck of the woods, over 3 out of 4 clients say yes. And whether they say yes, no, or what's false memories, what I say next is pretty much the same. We don't always remember things exactly as they happen. 2 children can witness a fight in a schoolyard and give different versions to a teacher 5 minutes later. And any parent of 2 or more children knows that a couple of siblings.
And for the client, the literal facts of regression are not as important as the experience. Or
Correct.
the metaphor
And I
of learning from it.
I include this in the pre-talk. I will say, anytime emotions are involved, the emotions can alter the perceptions. And I'm going to guide you back to what your subconscious perceives as the cause of your fear of flying or fear of elevators, or what the presenting problem is, because I'll usually use regression if it's a fear or anxiety. And I'll say, my job is not to sort out the fact from the fantasy, because your perceptions may be part fact and part fantasy, mostly fantasy or a combination of both. And yet you will be responding, as you have been over the years, to the perception as though it's real. And if you want to know what's factual, then you're at the wrong place. So my job is to help you release the emotional attachment to those perceptions, regardless of whether they're fact, fantasy, and usually they're a combination of both. Now, if it's a forensic application of hypnosis, then they need someone who's trained in forensic
They need
hypnosis.
somebody like Mark Howell.
I mentioned his name. I encourage, over the years, all the hypnotists I've trained, I've told them, you're not going to learn forensic hypnosis in this class.
Sure.
If you want to learn more about it, go to markshowell.com, markshowell.com. He has a lot of articles on the risk of false memories. And I also let my students know, and anyone who takes my regression workshop, that Gordon Emerson, the world authority on ego state therapy and the protege of John and Helen Watkins, actually put in print that if either the client or the hypnotherapist has a preconceived opinion about the cause of a problem, there's a 50-50 chance that the regression will go back to the wrong place.
Sure. Now, let me go over here to Bruce. Let me go over here and have Bruce talk a little bit about the book that you co-wrote.
Right, because he contributed.
Right, absolutely. And the book that you 2 co-wrote was titled
The Art of Hypnotic Regression Therapy.
Sure. And can you tell us a little bit about that book and why that's an important contribution to, sort of where we are in the field of hypnosis and psychotherapy?
Sure. Well, as Roy was saying, there was a great backlash against therapists that were practicing any type of regression therapy after the False Memory Foundation formed to prosecute therapists that were doing that kind of work. And the reason why there was so much controversy was because there were a lot of therapists that were doing wild regression work and were doing a lot of leading suggestions where they were leading their clients to conclude that in a highly suggestible state, I might add, in hypnosis, they were leading their clients to conclude that someone in their family or somebody in their childhood had, abused them. And there were lawsuits and people's lives that were ruined as a result of that, people that were innocent. So lots of therapists shied away from doing that kind of work for a good 15 or so years, and they just didn't want to have their careers ruined, which is understandable. When Roy and I had met, I had just a couple of years previous to that finished writing a book on hypnoanalysis, which of course incorporates regression therapy, with Dr. Dabney Ewan, who is a surgeon who is one of the proteges of David Cheek. And, he and I had worked together for several years on that book, utilizing idiomotor techniques that largely were derived from the work of David Cheek. And interested in actually writing a sequel to that book because it really didn't provide a very easily accessible step-by-step kind of guide for therapists or hypnotherapists to do hypnotic regression in doing hypnoanalysis. Plus, the book didn't address the whole false memory issue and the whole issue of memory, truth versus reconstructed narrative. So Roy and I were introduced by a mutual friend of ours who is the president of the United States division of Crown House Publishing, which is based out of Britain. His name is Mark Trachman, and Roy and I met at a convention, and we immediately hit it off, and real lot in common, and that we both felt that this was something that was meant to be our collaboration and our friendship, and we decided that we wanted to work together on a book that would outline and describe in detail, in terms that would be accessible and understandable, how to do hypnotic regression therapy and hypnoanalysis smartly and sensibly without falling into the trap of leading suggestions which would create false memories, without falling into the trap of throwing the baby out of the bathwater and taking the affect and the emotion out of hypnosis and hypnotherapy. So the book that resulted, which both Roy and I are very, very happy with, is a stepwise or a phase-based model of doing HRT, which is short for hypnotic regression therapy. And in the book, we address the theory and the model from which we work. We talk about the reasons why one would want to do hypnotic regression therapy, what the advantages are, and we talk about the pre-talk that we give to the client so that the client is well socialized to the model that we're utilizing so that there's no false assumptions or conclusions. And then we talk about basically how to do it. We talk about the intake and the evaluation, and then the steps that we take with the client to help them to uncover the emotional causes, perceived emotional causes, as Roy stated, for the presenting problems. And we take the reader in that book through the beginning phases of doing the therapy to the completion of therapy, where hopefully the problem is resolved and the client leaves the therapist's office feeling that a lot was accomplished, and the symptom, which essentially is a unconscious solution to the underlying problem, which the intention is to uncover through the hypnotic regression work, the symptom is resolved and everybody's happy. The therapist has had a successful case, and the client walks away feeling that they've really gotten something worthwhile out of therapy because they no longer have the problem, which is the symptom.
Sure.
So that's what the book is about. And it's not a very long book. It's it was meant to be a rather
I
accessible.
call it an airplane book. You can get on a long flight from Florida, fly back to Seattle, and actually read the whole thing. Now, you guys have answered a lot of questions. It's been great having both of you here. Every Sunday night we get together talking about hypnosis, learn some things, and also to experience hypnosis. And so I'm going to put you guys on the spot. In that normally we have our guests take 5 minutes to do a short meditation or a short, affirmative hypnosis session, just so we can all sort of end the day experiencing hypnosis. So would you like to do that, Roy, or Bruce, or do a double induction? Absolutely. So I'm going to step out of the picture here because it sounds like they would like to do this together. People ask me, I'm going to sit over in that chair and I'm going to go into trance. People ask me all the time, do you ever go into trance with your clients? And I always say, if I'm doing it. So I'm going to go over here and enjoy and let you guys huddle together. You take one of you move over to my chair, and that way you can get the best sound. First, one of you jump over to my chair.
Okay.
Push that other chair out of the way.
Okay. All right.
And probably take here about 5 minutes. So then I'll do the timer.
Well, I defer you.
All right. How about a very short regression to a happy experience of a long weekend.
Very good.
Sounds good.
Every time I teach regression, in order to get a student to be accustomed to the difference between leading and guiding, their first homework assignment is to do a regression to a happy experience as an adult. Charlie taught us to do it from childhood, and then one time I had a client who said, I don't remember anything before he was 12 because my childhood was so unhappy. So from then on, I decided it would always be an experience they remembered consciously, such as a long weekend to the mountains, or maybe a vacation to Hawaii, Florida.
Okay.
So before we do a brief induction, choose consciously an experience that you would like to remember that was very happy. And during this short meditation, remember only the happy times, not anything bad that happened at the experience, so that you get something good out of it. And if we're both going to do it, why don't you do a short induction and I'll do the regression. How's that?
That sounds great. I just want to say before I do a short induction that I think everybody is going to enjoy participating in. I have this belief that no matter what you've been through, and trust me, in my life, I've been through a lot of stuff. I believe that everybody has a laughing place, a peaceful place, a place where you can just kind of sit back and just kind of laugh at the rest of the world and just not really worry about much and just kind of just take your shoes off, so to speak, and just kind of relax. Know that you're safe, know that you're in a place that's pleasant, and everybody's different. For some people, their happy place or laughing place could be a briar patch, like Briar Rabbit from Songs of the South. Some people it could be the desert, some people it could be the beach, some people it could be the mountains, and some people it could be, your bedroom in your house. So with that said, I just want to suggest, and I like to do this with my clients, that you identify such a place for yourself, a refuge, a sanctuary. Or if you can't think of one, then imagine what type of place it would be if you were able to think of one, okay? So you don't even have to have been there. It could be just something, because, everything's about imagination. If you've ever visited Disney World, you know that it's all about imagination. So such a place, if you can't remember a place like that right now. And with that said, okay, if you're ready to enter hypnosis, if you're not already in hypnosis, why don't you invite yourself to comfortably close your eyes, and keeping your eyelids closed comfortably. Just look up to the top of your head. Keeping your eyes looking up to the top of your head with your eyelids closed. Take a deep breath and hold it for a moment. Feel it pressing against your chest. And now, just let that breath all the way out, blowing all the stress and tension out into the atmosphere as you're keeping your eyelids closed. Relax your eyes. That's right. And now take another deep breath. Hold it for a moment. And when you're ready to let it out, just imagine that you're floating in a way that you find comfortable and pleasant, right down through the chair or bed or whatever it is that you're sitting on. And as you float down, with each and every breath that you exhale, you'll notice that each time you exhale, you move down a little bit. And each time you inhale, you move up a little bit. And each time that you exhale, you become a little bit more relaxed, because as you're floating down, you're getting lighter. And you're blowing out the weight of the stress that you've been carrying from the day. And so, as you listen to the sound of my voice, with each and every breath that you take and every word that I say, regardless of me and my words, you can just allow yourself to become more and more relaxed. And perhaps just daydream about that pleasant place, that peaceful place, that laughing place, where you can be carefree and just laugh the rest of the world as you just sit back, take your shoes off, and take the next few minutes to let Roy take you back to a wonderful weekend.
And as you continue to breathe slowly, deeply, soothing tranquility. Just become aware of the fact that in your imagination, you have total freedom, total power to do anything you wish and to be anywhere you wish to be. So choose that pleasant experience, that happy weekend, or a place you visited, or a wonderful time you had and enjoy it, and move through time as well as space and imagine you are there again. In your imagination, re-experience with as your five senses as possible what you were doing that made you so happy. Be there. Where are you? What's happening? What is the most enjoyable or pleasant part of that experience? Re-experience the feel-good feelings, the attitude of gratitude for whatever you see or hear or feel or taste or smell that makes this experience so happy that you wish to retain the memory. And anytime you wish, you may tap in to the feel-good memories of this experience or even others that are similar to it, because you have the power to choose how to use your imagination and the freedom to be the best you can be. So move forward back in time now and go back to your peaceful place for a moment. And remember that you have the power of choice. And like a muscle that's used is stronger with use, your power of choice is stronger with use. So in a moment, as I count from 1 to 5, you can slowly and gently emerge from this short tour of your imagination, remembering that you have the freedom to do anything you wish in your imagination, to imagine your successes. And as I said, the number 1, become slowly and gently aware of where you are coming up, slowly and gently. Number 2, remembering everything you wish to remember. And on 3, give yourself an idea that anytime and every time you get behind the wheel of a motor vehicle, you are totally alert and responsive to any and all traffic and road situations. On number 4, imagine an energy flowing from head to toe, stretching if you wish. And on 5, eyes open, and welcome back. Thank you for flying Hypnotic Airlines. Where it's not necessary, move your seats back.
All right, I'm gonna put my head in. I'm just gonna mention that my weekend wonderful place, by the way, was Alan Marcy's backyard. So it was great to have everybody here tonight. Round of applause and freeze on the keyboard for Roy Hunter and Bruce Langer. And we hope to see everybody in Hypnophilus live this summer and at the IMDHE convention next year.
We plan on being there. One of the batteries fell out.
Can't turn us off. We're stuck.
We're stuck there on the screen.
We're stuck in hypnosis.
We're gonna do another regression.
Maybe we have a better regressive computer.